Hello and welcome. Today we're going to go over Chapter 13, HTML Forms. So all of us have filled out HTML forms in our life. You know, a lot of companies use them for different reasons. When you're submitting an application for school, you fill out a form. For a car loan, for a mortgage, there's many different reasons that forms are used, right? So right here is an example form I have different fields in here. These called text fields. This first one's a text field. Next one's a password field. Have some radio buttons, check boxes, and then other types of fields, multiple select fields, email fields. And also at the bottom here, I've got button, submit button, reset button, right? This will reset the form. Submit will submit the form, okay? All forms have a beginning and end form tag. All of your form elements are within the form. You can also have other tags as well, div tags, paragraph tags, and basically any other kind of tag. But what gets submitted when you submit a form, all those other tags are not submitted. It's only the form tags that get submitted, right? Yeah, I also wanted to mention that it's possible whenever you have a form element, such as an input tag or other type tag, if it's outside of your form tag, when you submit your form, it will not be submitted with it, okay? So if for some reason you're trying to figure out why something you created, some kind of input field is not being submitted, that's the first thing to look at. Make sure it's within your form tag. So here we have a form called My First Form. The ID is My First Form. It has an ID, an action, a method. There are other attributes as well. These are the more common ones, okay? Action tag. An action tag is basically where you're submitting your form to. So since we are basically dealing with the front end, we don't have a background web server that we have configured for this, right? So basically all we are doing is using our live server, right? And our live server has, it's this local host, right? The live server is not set up to submit forms to back end, right? You can submit it, but it will not go to a back end because there's no back end configured, and live server is really meant for front end. But even though we don't have a back end, we'll still be able to debug some of this, and you'll be able to see what you would be sending to a back end, okay? We also have a method here, and there's different methods. The two most popular ones are post and get. Post is for basically sending form data, especially when your form is about data that you're just trying to post, right? And what I mean by that is, like what this form is you're entering name, password. This is data you're wanting to send to the web server. It's not used for purposes of maybe a search would be, right? So let's just say, I know a good example of using something besides a post is a get. And a good example of using a get is Google has what's called advanced search. Let's take a look at that. So when you use advanced search here, you're looking for some more advanced search than what you would get on a normal Google search. You could choose different things, languages, regions, last updated, all kinds of different options here, right? So when you go ahead and click advanced search, what this is doing, this isn't doing a post like we looked at a post on our form. This is doing a get, right? And so when you do a get, when I click this, it's going to do a get request, and it returns this, right? What you'll notice about this is in this address bar is basically all of that data. Well, we didn't put much in there, but what we put in on that advanced form was dogs, cats, and birds. And as you notice, up here is dogs, cats, and birds. You'll see a lot of other data up here as well. These are all these other, that was all those other fields, but we didn't put any data in there. So they're just going to be blank, right? But you're going to have the name, you just don't have a value, right? So one thing I wanted to really show you here is another way we can look at our request, our submissions, I should say. Our submissions is by using Chrome's developer tools. And to do that, we can hit, you can hold down the control key, the shift key, and an I, and that will open our developer tools. When you come in here by default, you're most likely going to be starting with this on your right-hand side here. But what we need to do is we need to go to a different tab up here. We need to go to this network. Okay. And when you come in here, you're most likely going to be going to this all here. You need to choose dock. Okay. And what we're going to go ahead and do now is we're going to refresh this page. This is our GET request, right? All of our data for our request that we had is up here in the address bar, right? And this is called a GET request, right? So we're going to refresh that. And if you come down here, we can go ahead and click on our search. This was our request. And as you can see, we have this payload. We'll have headers and a payload here. Other things as well, but I don't want to get too far into this. We have headers, so we can see our request method was a GET, right? Here's our request URL. This is everything that was part of that URL. Here's our GET request, and here's the status code saying it was a good request. It came back. Everything's good. Okay, right? Here's payload. So this is basically, that's all of the different parameters that were sent, but it's in a different form. And this is part of our payload. This is query string parameters, okay? And this is just showing you basically what was all sent. Okay? And this will be important because we're going to go ahead and do this. We're going to do the same thing with our form, and we're going to see how we can also use this. Okay. So let's close that. And so what we're going to go ahead and do here, we'll go back to our form example. We're going to change this post to a GET for now. Okay. So this will be something similar to what we did for the advanced search for Google. And what I did in here, I made, and we're going to talk about this more, I made some of these fields required. So we have to put some kind of data in here. Okay. So we're going to put that in there. We're going to put a password. And the email is also a required field. And I believe all the other ones are optional. So what we're going to go ahead and do, let's make this big now. And let's go ahead and go back to developer tools, which we can hit the control, shift, hold those down and hit I. And that will bring up developer tools. And once again, most likely you're going to be starting at, this would be by default what you would see. Once you start bringing up certain things, it'll kind of, your browser such, and it's going to go back to the same thing. So that's why mine's going back to the network. Probably going to be network, like by default at the beginning. It's going to be network and all. Okay. We want to go ahead and choose this dock here, network and dock here. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and scroll down and hit our submit button. And when we hit the submit button, we're going to see that we got this 404, this error. Well, this is expected because, like I said, in live server, we submitted the form, right? This was our action submit, and so this is done correctly. But it's the fact is that we don't have anything configured to handle a form submission, right? Live server wasn't meant to do that, right? So it's just saying, hey, no, I can't do this. But this URL is still exactly what we expect and want here, okay? So let's go ahead, and now we're going to go ahead back here in Developer Tools. We're going to click on this, and now we can see all of our string parameters, name, password, basically all of those different fields that are in our form are right there, right? We can also go to headers, and we can see, just like we did for the Google Advanced form, we can see the request URL. Here's all of our name value pairs. That's what it's called. Each name value pair is separated with an ampersand, all right? And that's kind of a hint there, the ampersand. Remember, like when we did we had to do escape kind of characters for ampersands in our HTML, and that's kind of the reason, because that ampersand's used in URLs. So that's why we had to do something special sometimes when we have an ampersand in our HTML code, right? I know we kind of dealt with that in past labs, right? So, like I said, each of the name value pairs, which is like password equals pass, and name equals Jim K. That's your name, and that's your value. Password is your name. Pass is the value, and then it's separated by ampersands, right? So that's that, okay? So now we're going to go ahead and change that to a post and take a look at that. Save that. That should have saved our form. So if we go back in here, we're going to enter some data. Again, it's the required fields that we have in this form. And I have them saved from before. And let's make this big. Let's bring up our developer tools. Control-Shift-I. Now we got our developer tools up. We have doc here. And so we're just going to go ahead and go to the bottom here. Click on the submit button. Now this page isn't working. This is what we expect, right? Up here in the address bar, since this is a post request, this is different than a GET request. A GET request, we had all that data up here in the browser bar, right? But for a post, we don't have that. It's actually stored. It's stored within the browser, or I should, temporarily stored until we submit it in the browser, right? So if we click on the submit here, we have our headers, and we show that we did a post request. Here was our request. Obviously, it didn't work because we don't have a back end to support a form submission. If we go look at payload, now we can see all of our form data. If you notice, it's a little different than what we've seen. I don't know if you recall, but for a GET, it said query string. This says form data, okay? So here's our name, password, and we did our conform password. Most of this other stuff we left blank, but we also had our email and confirm emails, right? So there's all the data. Okay, so what else I wanted to talk about on this? So one other attribute that's really important is when you're sending form data, it's best to have like this: encryption typing, application, XWWW form, URL encoded, okay? Another option here is also, let's say you're doing a bunch of file uploads. You could have a form it's basically it's all about uploading files. And if you do that, you want to do a different type of encryption type. You want to use multi-part. So just to keep that in mind. All right. So I think we've spent enough time on that. So in here we've got a bunch of divs. We're using, we're using styles. We have a form group for each of our little sections here. We're not going to really dive much into our CSS for this, but I'll make all this available for you to look at. The first thing I did want to point out here is these labels. You have these different labels. You have name, right? Label for password. So whatever you have in this for attribute, and in this case it's name, right? In this one it's password. Down here it's confirm password. Whatever is in this for attribute is associated with this ID. It binds the label to this input, this specific input. Okay? It binds this label to this input. So let me show you kind of, a lot of the reason for these labels is really for a lot of accessibility. Screen readers use these labels, and so they're very important for that. Now, if you notice over here on the form on the right side of your screen here, if I click on any of these labels, name, password, confirm password, look where the focus goes. It goes actually to the input field. And that's why when I said it binds the label to the input field, that's what I mean. When I click on password, it's going to put the focus in there. When I click on confirm password, it's going to put the focus in there. Okay? Let's just say I go here and let's change something just to show. If I change this far to a name 2 and I save this. Now when I come over here, let's just refresh that to make sure. When I click on that, it's not putting focus in there anymore, right? These are still working. This one isn't. That's because it's incorrect, right? It has to be the same as the ID. So something to keep in mind when you're developing, that your for attribute for the label must be the same as the ID, right? So another thing that I really want to point out here, well, more than one thing, but so you have different input types, right? So this text here is one type, password's another type. We have hidden, we have radio buttons, we have checkboxes. These are not ones that you can just make up your own words in here, right? You have to use the specific types, right? Another attribute that I want to point out here is the name. So as we said, the label is associated with the ID. This name actually is associated with the form submission. So let's change this to, I want to change the name of this to form submit, just so we can see this. We're going to go back over here and let's go ahead and put some data in here again. I think this is important to know. It's going to really help you a lot in debugging things and understanding how things are supposed to be working and what's wrong when you run into problems. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the Control-Shift-I to bring up our tools. And we've got this already, Network Doc. And we're going to go ahead and scroll to the bottom, hit Submit here. And click on our Submit. And as you can see here, name Submit. So when you submit a form, it uses the name parameters. That's what gets sent to the web server. Let's see here. Yeah, flip that. All right, what's the next thing I want to go over on this? So we have a placeholder, and as you can see, let's hit reset on our form. So here's your placeholder. Enter your name, right? That's a placeholder. Once you enter it, that will disappear, right? That's just a placeholder. Next thing here is this required. Like I was talking about earlier, you know, I had to make sure that I put data in the required fields. If I don't, it wouldn't let me submit it. So let's just go ahead and let's do it. Let's submit this and see what happens. Since we have this set as required, it will say, please fill out this field. Okay. If I fill out that field, I hit submit again. Now it's going to go to the next one that was required, right? And so forth until you fill out all the required fields, okay? Next thing after that I wanted to discuss is this tab index. And actually two different things I want to discuss is tab index and access keys, right? I believe it's covered in your book on both of those. One thing that I really want to point out about both the access keys and a tab index, it's not really very accessibility friendly. And the reason for like the tab index thing, if you have your tab index incorrect, really a tabbing should go from top to bottom, you know, left to right, top to bottom. And you could actually mess that up. When you play with that tab index, you're controlling which field is getting focus. And let me show you that real quick here. So here, I want to reset our form here. And let's go back up to the top here. So here's our first. Yeah, let's just not. So nothing's in focus right now. If I hit a tab, that's tab index of 1. That's our very first field. When I hit another tab, that's tab index of 2. When I hit another tab, that's tab index of 3, right? Now, let me change this tab index to the second one to 12, right? And I saved. Let's go back up here to top. So now if I hit the tab index, the tab key, you're going to go to that. Now if I hit the tab key again, it's going to skip that one because it's defined as 12. So it's just going to go to the next one in order. After 1, it can't find a 2, so it's going to go to 3, right? So there's a lot of danger, I guess, or, you know, that you could, you know, somebody could mess up the tab index on a form, and those screen readers, it causes a big problem with those screen readers, okay? And another thing I want to point out, because I have some access keys in here as well, and I want to, let's see. So here's an access key of C. I got one C, one E. So what happens with an access key, we're going to go back over here in our browser. If you hit the Alt key and the access key, so that first one was a C, right? If I hit Alt and C, and that was on the comments form element. If I hit Alt and C, you can see it went ahead and put focus in the comment section, which is great. You know, you can see how that there could be some benefits in doing that, but there can also be some other problems. So let's say access key here is an E. So on this one, let's go back up here and put focus in our name field. Now we're going to hit Alt and then E. And let's see what happens. See what's happening here is that The browser also has shortcuts. You know, these are all about shortcuts, right? These access keys, they're all about shortcuts. And by me hitting Alt E, the browser actually uses Alt E, that shortcut key itself, right? And it has to do with my account, right? So that it is a important reason that it's probably a bad idea to use these access keys, because you get different results than you expect to get. It didn't go to the email field, it went to a different field, right? Okay, so on the password field, something specific to that password field is you don't see the text that you're putting in there, correct? And same for the confirm password. Well, confirm password is just another password for field. It's just called confirm password, but it's just basically two password fields, but both they just have different labels, right? Let's see what else. Oh, I did want to go over one more thing. Why don't we use our name? Let's go back to our name one. So there's also a attribute called disabled. And here, I think a good way to really see this is using, you can also use a value. And what a value will do is it's going to give you the default value. And what I actually did is, well, I besides just putting the value there, I also disabled it. Okay. So you can't change it. You can't do anything with it, right? Now, when you would submit a form, if you have a disabled field, it will not submit that field. Okay, something to keep in mind. It will not, when you have it disabled, it will not submit the field. If you have a read only, right? Now, read only, you can't change it. You can't change a read only field, right? But it's not disabled. A read-only field, when you submit a form, it has a read-only field, it will get submitted with your form, but you can't change it, okay? Just wanted to make sure that I pointed that out. And let's move on to our radio buttons. So when you send a radio button, when you group, let's just say this, when you group a radio buttons, if they have the same name, so we have contact and contact, we have a radio button of email and a radio button of phone. Both have the same name. The reason you want them, when you want them to have the same name is when you want it to be either one or the other, right? One or the other. It toggles, right? Depends on which one you select. If you have it by a different name, then they both can be selected, right? Usually for radio buttons, it's one or the other, but there might be some circumstances that you want them to be both be able to be selected, right? So put that back. Yep. Next one is, let's see, is there anything else I wanted to discuss on radio buttons? When you do submit a radio button, it's important to have this value here. So when you submit a radio button, it's selected like email. What's going to get submitted is contact is email. If you selected the phone one, it will submit contact equals phone, Okay. If you don't have a value, yeah, if you don't have a value, what it's going to end up doing, let's say you didn't have this value of email there, it would default to contact equals on, and that way you would know, let's say you didn't have a value for either of those. If it was like that, it would submit a contact equals on, and that way when you send that to the web server, it wouldn't know which one you selected. Let me, why not? Let's just go look at that real quick. So let's add our required fields here. These developer tools are really going to come in very handy for this. All this farm stuff. So here, yeah, sometimes I have problems in here. Sometimes you get in a situation. It depends on your, because you have all these different responsive options and different screen sizes, and sometimes it can get things messed up here. I sometimes struggle with that. So here we're just going to go ahead and submit this, and we're going to look at our submit. And as you can see, it said contact on, and that's because you didn't have a value for your radio button. And like I said, so you send that to the backend server, it's not going to know, was it phone or was it email, right? Let's reset that. Okay. What's the next thing I want to go through? Obviously check boxes. You can select multiple. And for this, so the ID is just used for us locally, right? The name is what's important. And so in here, actually, this would also be a problem because it's going to use this name. It doesn't have to have a value. It just has to have a name here, I believe. Let's just check this. So we're going to select that. We got to put on our other stuff. All right, we can go down here. We're going to hit submit. And you can see it says gaming on. So that means you selected gaming. Let's go back here and let's add these other ones as well. And since they had hobby there, I think it's going to be a problem for those. Oh, I have to put password in again. You always got to put password in. It always clears passwords. Hit submit. And we go look at that. So you say hobbies on, hobbies on. So that the name's very important. Like what we been saying here from the beginning is, that's what it passes as names, right? So the names have to be correct. So in this case, we'd want second one being sports, right? And the third one being travel. And actually, let me fix my name because I think I have my name as read only. I want to get rid of that like that. I guess I didn't. I just left the value in there. Okay. Next thing I want to discuss here is a hidden field. What a hidden field is whenever you have a hidden field, you're not going to see it on the screen, right? It can be used for different things. Let's say a big old data screen that comes back, and you actually are using paging, where you're paging to another page. I'm sure you've done that before, where you've been something where you get a big set of data, and then you click the next. It gives you a whole nother set of data. Well, a hidden field would be good because you would store like page one, and then you click it, page two, and that's a hidden field that's used. It keeps getting sent back to the web server saying, "Hey, I'm on page T. I need the next one, page three." There's lots of different reasons to use hidden fields, but the whole thing is hidden fields are not stored in the you won't see it on the page itself, but when you send a hidden field, you will see it in your field list. When we see it in developer tools, you will still see the hidden field. It's not like, and actually you will see it within your HTML as well. Like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said it like that. You will see it within when you view source. You won't see it on the page, but you will see it in the source. Um, I'm not going to go through all of these. You can spend some time yourself looking through them. I did want to go into patterns. So let's look at some patterns here. So what is a pattern? I think I've got a few things have patterns on here. So it's expecting. So we've got this pattern, right? This is a pattern it's expecting. So this one is expecting a year, month, date, just like that. So let's go ahead and so you got 4 digits. So expecting a year. Let's put in incorrect data. Okay. So we're not sticking to the pattern. Okay. Let's submit that, and I'll show you how that works. So we have our incorrect pattern on there, right there. And we have, okay, yeah, I got my email fields there, don't I? If I submit, it'll tell me that it's the wrong pattern. Okay. And to explain this pattern here, so what's this saying? These can become very complicated. And actually, I know at first look, you're like, what the heck is this? But it's really not that. It's really not that bad here. It's basically just telling you that you got 4 digits, a dash, right? 4 digits, a dash, 2 digits, a dash, and two more digits. Okay, that's all that's saying. Also wanted to discuss this a little bit. So this is called a field set, as you can see, and this credit card information. It has this border all the way around here, and a field set's used to group a bunch of data together that's related, right? So this is all credit card information. It's a way to group it all together so you understand. Oh, this is all. All of this. All these fields are specific for the credit card information, and that's basically it. Um, I guess I could for state. Select your state, select it, disabled. Yeah, so what this is here is a drop down menu, and you use a select statement. You use a select, and you use multiple options. Okay. And so when you submit this, basically what it's going to do is, well, obviously the ID, we know that's for the label, right? And IDs are also used a lot for the JavaScript, right? And then we have names, and the name is what gets submitted, the form submission. So it will submit name and the value, it'd be whatever you selected. It'd either be empty string or it'd be MO for Mo or IL for Illinois, right? So it's going to say state equals Mo or state equals Illinois. And here, what you're doing here, just select your state. You know, it's just basically kind of information type thing, and you have this selected and disabled. So let's even the selected thing. Let's move this. Let's move this on to the next one here, and we'll see how that changes that. Now hit save. Now the Missouri selected, right? That's how the selected works. Now, one thing I wanted to mention is, this is just kind of some, a attributes that are associated with forms. I should say attributes, certain functionality that's related to forms. And if you have a button named reset, okay, it's going to reset your form, right? Just by having it there, it's the browser knows, hey, I've got a reset button. I'm inside a form. Reset will reset the form. Same with submit. When you click submit, by clicking submit, it knows that it's going to call the submit on your form. Okay, when you click that submit button, calls the action. And as far as buttons are concerned, you can make any image into a button, and basically just by enclosing an image within a button tag, you can make any image into a button. I think that's I think we've gone through quite a bit there. I hope some of this helps. It's really beneficial to get familiar with the developer tools. I think it'll really aid you and assist you with being able to develop forms. Okay. So that's all I have, and I will talk to you later. Take care.